All right, guys. So today is April 16th, 2025. We're going to be going over long-term rentals, midterm rentals, and short-term rentals. And we got a bonus at the end, which is one of my favorite parts of renting out to tenants. So stick around for that, and you guys will find out what it is. All right. So let's get into the advantages of long-term rentals. Hi, Vitalia. How you doing? We're going to get into uh, the the pros for long-term rentals. So, what are the pros? And what is long-term rentals? Long-term rentals is usually 6 months leases or above. So it can go from 6 months. It can go for years, years and years and years. Okay. And one major advantage to long-term rentals is that you have stabilization with your rents, right? So if you have a consistent tenant that's a long-term renter, they're going to pay month after month after month, right? And some renters they stay for a very long time. Some we have renters that have been there for 5+ years now. Since we purchased the property, or they've been there since we purchased a new property. They were in there, right? So that's one advantage is you're not going to see a vacancy if they are staying, and you're going to always have rents coming in. Okay. Another advantage is that you don't really have to do much maintenance unless something really goes wrong in your apartment, in that apartment. Like, say, you know, the the toilet needs a new toilet because it's outdated after 10+ years. Then you have to go in there and fix it. But other than that, you don't really have to maintain the property, because, or not the property but the apartment, because the renter, he or she is already taking care of it. Okay, so that's another advantage to long-term rentals. Another advantage to long-term rentals is that you don't have to pay for utilities there at that apartment. So it's less overhead, right? So the renter, they're going to be paying for their utilities. They're going to be paying for, their Wi-Fi, all of that stuff they're paying for. So it's less overhead for you. And in turn, you get more money in your pocket for that rental. Okay, let's get into some of the cons of a long-term rental. So some of the cons may be, or one may be that after the renter leaves the apartment, you usually, if they stayed for years, you usually have to go in and you have to renovate that thing. You got to renovate, you know, you got to paint the walls, you got to, fix, appliances, or swap out appliances. You got to do a lot of renovations. So that might cost you, a couple $1,000s to fix up. And then on top of that, you may have a vacancy for 1 month or 2 months before someone comes in, and you get another long-term renter. Okay, so that's one of the cons. Overall, long-term rental is kind of the way to go. I would say it's worked out for my wife and I. We've been doing it since 2019, when we purchased our first property, our first duplex, where we stayed at the top, right? And then we rented out the bottom long term. And for some reason, when you have long-term renters, well, in that apartment, if they stay a year or 2 years, if they leave, they end up purchasing a property. Especially if they see you come in and purchase the property and they're renting, they get that motivation to be like, okay, I can do the same thing. I can purchase. Um, some other cons um, with long-term renters, you are you have a lease agreement. So, if you don't do a thorough background check of that renter, you may have issues in the long term. Especially if you purchase a property and there's renters already in there and they have a lease agreement of a year or more, and they kind of like aren't great tenants to begin with, you're going to have an issue getting them out, as opposed to short term and midterm renters, where they go out easily. Short term Airbnbs, they stay for a couple days and they go out easily. But overall, I would say, guys, if you guys are going to get into, buying property, or if you have property already, definitely long term is the stable way to go. Okay. Anybody got any questions about long term rentals before we switch over to midterm?
One quick question. What are some of the other factors, because you mentioned them, that we could consider or should consider when choosing a long-term rental, from their standpoint and also from the landlord's standpoint? What are some of the the factors that are crucial to ensure, that we can say that they're long-term, Yeah. Question.
Um, yeah. So the lease agreement, definitely look over your lease agreement to make sure they're long term. Um, and with long term renters, um, you want to make sure that you vet them well. That's the most important part, guys, is vetting. And, sometimes we have issues with the tenants that are already in there, right? That, we purchased the building and then they already have a lease agreement for, a year, or they're month to month, and maybe they're not paying the rent on time or something like that. Um, you want to try to get those people out. You know, you want to start fresh. You want to start brand new. Um, and then long-term rentals, you want to make sure that they are at least a year. When you vet them, you got to go over a lot of different things. You got to go over their background. Where do they work, right? Um, their credit score. How good is their credit? What's on their credit score? What eliminates them according to your standards? What eliminates them, right? See if they're actually uh, paying paying on time, you know, to their landlord, their current landlord, right? If you're purchasing a property, you want to make sure that those guys, they're paying on time for that landlord that they have now, and you want proof of it, 3 to 6 months of proof showing that they're paying. If not, they gotta go. And it's no hard feelings, it's business, right? So definitely that's the most important part, is to vet long term. Your long term tenants, definitely vet them. Some other things, you can go to their property. If you're purchasing a property, you're not going to really see how they really live in real life, because people want to show their best to you when you're coming and you're viewing the building. But if they're moving in from another place to your apartment, you want to go and you want to see how they're living there if you can, because the same way that they live there is how they're going to live in your apartment. If they're a sloppy tenant in that apartment, they're bringing that to your apartment. Okay. I hope I answered your question, Jody. If not, just put it in the comments, and then I'll see if I can answer it better. Okay. Um, so for let's get into midterm rentals. Midterm rentals is usually 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 months, sometimes 8 months, right? Sometimes a little bit longer. Some midterm renters, they decide that. Can you put yours? I got you. The midterm rentals,
I
sometimes
was
they
trying to
see.
make a comment.
Oh, go ahead, Dad. Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I was trying to make a comment real quick, just additive to what you were saying in the last segment. When you renting long term, just one thing to be added is that you have to you have to vet the people, like you were saying, very, very well. That's one of the things I know that I taught to you, Leon. I taught you vet them very well. But one thing you have to do is begin with the end in mind, right? Begin with the end in mind. Just assume that you're gonna have to put them out one day. It could be the nicest people in the world, could even be your family, but just assume you have to put them out. One of the things you have to understand is that when you go down to the courts, you have to have specific. I had to put tenants out before, and some of the things that you have to have is like, you'd rather have, like, get a copy of their social security number, get a copy of their driver's license if you can, so you have this identification, and make sure you have it for everybody that's in the apartment. If you have a lease and they come into the apartment, and it's just two people, and then all of a sudden it's four people, they've broken the lease because you had the agreement that it was just two people. But one of the things is it's very, very difficult to put out John Does and other people when you don't have identification on them. So just begin with the end in mind. Have the prerequisite ID that you need to put them out from the beginning.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that's a fact. Especially if you're in places where, especially if you're in places where it's tenant friendly, and you're in states where it's tenant friendly. Especially if like you're in New York City, oh my goodness, you need to, like my dad said, you need to start with the end in mind, right? Make sure that you vet them correctly, because some of these people are professionals, man. Some of them will get in your apartment, they'll pay the first month's rent and security, and then they have an excuse after that. So make sure you're vetting them, especially those tenant friendly states. Make sure you're vetting them well. If you're in, oh yeah, professional house hoppers too. Yes, for sure. These people they've been doing it for years. They know how to play the game. They know how to get through the system, and they know how to prolong everything so that they can stay as long as they can. This is what they do for a living, right? So make sure you are vetting them correctly, and go with your instinct. Go with your instinct, guys. If you meet someone and they have this funny story and you're not really feeling them, don't go against your instinct. Just move on to the next person, right? Because they'll end up burning you at the towards the end. Like when they get in there, they might end up burning you. So just go with your instinct. Have your criteria set forth before you. So before you even start to try to get people in, right? Have a list of things that you expect out of that tenant. A good credit score. They need to be, working at their job for a year plus, or they're making 2.5 times the rent. Have these certain criterias so that if they don't meet these criterias, it's a no. You might be able to get away with, one or two of your criteria is not there, right? But overall, they should match up with your criterias, okay? And my dad is correct, right? Start with the end in mind. Like, the way that I learned how to vet tenants is when I was like around 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. My parents, they gave me people's their whole background. So I would stand there and observe in the apartment that they wanted to rent, right? And then my parents would give me their credit score, their whole thing. And then they would ask me, what do you think about this person? Like, how's their credit score? What's on their credit score? So like, that's the way that I learned. And kudos and thanks to them, I'm very diligent when it comes to vetting tenants. All of our, if not, one of our tenants is late right now, right? But overall, all of our tenants are good. Thank God. God is good. Thank God that all of our tenants are good. But that's because we know how to vet the tenants, and we know how to communicate with the tenants too. That's important. Communication is key. If you're not a good communicator, or if you're not a people's person, don't try to rent to long-term renters. Don't get into this business if you're not a people's person, because people get that, they get that vibe from you. They understand this guy is just collecting rent. Like, he doesn't care about his apartments. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. Or some other tenants will be like, oh, this guy's a good communicator. He knows how to, he or she knows how to, deal with people. They get that feel for you. Okay. So make sure that you're a people's person. Make sure that you're vetting them well. And let's move on to midterm. So yeah, midterm is 3 to 6 months. Midterm is usually professionals, right? So we rent to nurses, a lot of nurses that stay midterm, which is 3 to 6 months, sometimes 8 months. They'll they're so good. They usually work 12-hour shifts. They come in, they keep your place clean. They go to sleep and recycle, do the same thing again and again and again, right? And that's one of the advantages to midterm rentals, is that your place is going to be kept clean. When that person leaves in 6 months, you don't have to really do much, right? You just get the next nurse in, and then you go from there. Um, another another pro to midterm rentals is that because you are renting to them 3 to 6 months, right? There's a utility bill associated with that. And you can actually write that off in your taxes. So if they're using that utility bill, you're gonna get tax benefits from it. Okay. Let's get into some of the cons. Is that you have a turnover. So every 3 to 6 months, you have a turnover with that rental, right? So say they come in and they say, "Oh, I need to just stay 3 months because I have a contract with the hospital, Albany Med," right? In 3 months, you're gonna have to turn that over. You're gonna have to get somebody else in there, right? And then it may take a month, it may take 2 months, you know. So you just have to be careful with that because you lose out on the rent. So that's one of the cons. But overall, midterm rentals are great, right? And the people are fantastic. Some of our best tenants have came from those midterm rentals because they're so quiet. They go to work, they're very friendly, and they're doing a good thing. They're doing nursing. They have an important job to do, right? So they're great. All right. Anybody have any questions? Has anybody done midterms in here? And can kind of give a input on it? No? Okay. So yeah, so those are some of the pros and cons to midterm, okay? Um, let's get into short-term rentals, which is, not one of my favorites. Not one of my wife and I's favorites, right? But it can be good. Short-term rentals, you can rent out you just have to sign up with Airbnb or VRBO, right? And then you can do short-term rentals. Some of the pros to short-term rental is you can actually make 3 times the rent, 2 to 3 times the rent, compared to if you just rented it long-term, right? So if you're getting $1,000, for a stable long-term renter, if you do it correctly, and if you're in the right location for your short-term rental, you can get $2,000 for your rental, because you're renting it out by the day. So you're renting it for a premium, right? And with short-term rentals, the thing is, people are not coming there to rent long. People are coming there for the experience. Like my wife and I and my cousins and friends, we went to the Poconos a couple months ago, and we didn't rent it was, I'm not gonna say it's expensive, but it was a good amount, and we rented for the experience. And that we realized that one trip, that weekend trip, that paid for the guy's whole month of expenses, right? So imagine if he has, 3 or 4 weekends booked up for that Airbnb. You're giving people that great experience, right? And then also you're profiting. You're profiting a major profit, right? So that's why some people get into that Airbnb arbitrage, where they don't rent out, like they rent from someone else. They'll rent an apartment for like $1,000 or something like that, $1,200, and then they'll turn around and they'll put furniture in it. They'll put everything in it, and then they rent it out on Airbnb, and they make their profit that way without even purchasing a property. So that's one advantage to Airbnb rentals and VRBO, right? Another advantage is you can write everything off: your furniture, you know, um, the utilities. There's a lot of tax benefits to short-term Airbnb rentals. Okay, so just remember that if you are renting out Airbnb, and the most important part of renting out Airbnb is that location. If you get into, say, like a C-class neighborhood where you have working people, a lot of people that go to work back and forth, and it's not like a vacation area, I wouldn't advise to rent through Airbnb, because you're not going to have a good experience, because it's not worth it, honestly. We tried, and we're gonna get into the cons, but we tried with Airbnb with one of our apartments, and we just had completely renovated it, right? And we saw like we can get like 120 a night, 100 a night, and you know, in a month you can get 2100, 20 to 2500, right? And that's all good. But remember, we're in a C-class neighborhood, so we've had rentals where these people are coming in, they're breaking up your your couches. You know, one instance we had to have the police come through because they I don't know if they were drug addicts or whatever, but it was not a good experience. So if you're in a C-class neighborhood, a working neighborhood, don't try Air. I would advise not to try Airbnb. If you're in somewhere like Florida or Poconos, or you're going to an area where people are just vacationing, that's an advantage for you. Okay. We've also had um, someone come in to do a party, a celebration. Like I said, it's Airbnb is for the experience. So someone came in and threw a party, and they had people running up and down the stairs and everything, and it was a mess, right? And then Airbnb didn't really help us out when it came to recovering for our broken furniture, things that were messed up in the apartment. So make sure when you're doing Airbnb, VRBOs, you're in a good location where people are coming in for the experience. Okay. Anybody got any questions on short-term rentals? Any of you guys thinking about doing that? Anything like that? No? Okay. So we'll get into the bonus. Let's do the bonus one. The bonus one is co-living. And this is something that's kind of like people are just now getting used to, or people are starting to do, where the landlord is renting out rooms, right? And this is one of my it has become one of our favorites because of the potential, right? If you have a 3-bedroom, if you have a 4-bedroom, and you're renting out for 700 per month, that adds up. That adds up way more than if you had a stable one or two people renting out a 3-bedroom, right? You're making maybe 1.5, 2 times the rent, right? And some of the pros are like the rent is one of the pros where you're collecting extra cash flow, right? Another pro is that if the roommates get along, oh, you're golden, man. Because they stay longer. It's affordable for them, right? Like if someone is paying 700 a month compared to renting even a studio, they have to pay more, and then they have to pay for utilities on top of that, right? You can do it where you're paying for the utilities, and you can write that off, one, or you can pass that on to the tenants, right? And they can split the utility bill. You just give them the bill every month, and they split that. So it's a win-win for the landlord, and it's a win-win for the roommate because they're not paying as much. Okay. And then another pro is that, if you have, say, 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, right? And one of them is vacant for like 3 months, 4 months. It doesn't hurt you, compared to if you had 2 or 3 bedroom and you rented it out to one person. If that's vacant, right? For a month or two, you lose out on that rent. But if a room is vacant, you're still collecting rent. You're still able to pay your mortgage easily, and you're still able to cash flow, even if one person is missing, right? And usually with the roommates, the thing that I like, they start referring each other, you know? So it's kind of like automatic. If a vacancy comes up, they find someone that they want to roommate with, and they'll say, hey Leon, I have this person that wants to rent from you, and they work with me. So you can easily vet them very easily. And usually we give a referral to that tenant that has referred anyone. We'll give them, $100 or whatever. And it keeps them motivated to bring someone else in case we ever get another vacancy, right? It's kind of like an incentive. So those are one of my favorite things to do is the short term, not short term, the roommate leases, right? And the lease is very easy too. The roommates have to agree to do certain chores, do certain things, and if they get along, it's all good. Okay, but if they don't get along, that's one of the cons. If they don't get along, you in for a whirlwind because they're going to be fighting constantly. You know, we had two roommates at college, and I think the other guy, I think he did Uber or something like that. He was coming in from Africa, and it wasn't a good experience because it was like too much testosterone, and they were always fighting about petty things. So we had to end up not evicting them, but giving them an ultimatum and telling them they both got to go. Okay, so that's one of the cons. If they don't get along, you're gonna have issues. So make sure those roommates get along well. If they do, you're good to go. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have anything on short term or midterm, long term roommates? No.
Dad with a comment.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, every area is different, like you were saying before, depending upon where you're living. So some places, especially in the city, that's called an SRO, like the single room occupancy. So you have to be careful of the legality of what you're doing in your particular area. So it doesn't take anything much but to look it up and find out if what you're doing is a bias. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. In New York City, it's called single room occupancy, SROs, which it could be. I don't know if it's legal or not, but yeah, we've came up with like roommate lease agreements, so they agree on certain terms for that apartment, right? And knock on wood. I mean, I wouldn't say knock on wood, but we haven't had much issues with the roommates. I mean, at first, we had to get used to it, and we had to learn, right? We have to learn, okay, these people must get along. If not, you're gonna have issues, right? And that's what happened. We had issues with our first two people coming in, and that's another thing with college students. I would I'm not gonna discriminate and say don't rent to college students, but for single rooms, college students, it tends to not work out because they're not professionals, right? They're coming in, they want to have their friends over, they want to have their girlfriend or boyfriend over, and it doesn't work out for the other roommates. But if you have like professionals, like we have professionals, like people that work at, they work at like the airport, or they'll work at, we have a place called Regeneron in I think it's in Albany, yeah, or Rensselaer. Regeneron. These people are professionals, so they're coming in. They're very quiet. They mind their business. They cook if they need to cook. They're in and out, right? In their 30s, late 20s and 30s. So it works out. But if you have college students that are coming in, their parents may be paying for the year that they're there, it doesn't tend to work out with professionals and college students. Okay, so just bear that in mind. If you're going to rent to college students, let them all be college students. But if you're going to rent to professionals, keep it consistent. Rent to professionals and don't mix it up. All right. You can also do co-living, like male and female. Right. We started out with just males, right, and then we switched to all females, and now we're doing males and females. So it works. It works out. Either way, it works out, but you just have to make sure that they get along. That's the major thing. Okay, and the ability to profit more is great. Like say you would be making maybe 1,200 for an apartment. You can easily make 2,100 for that same apartment if you rent it out by the room. Okay, anybody have any questions?
Comment.
Mm-hmm.
The trade-off is going to be for the short term that you have a lot more work to do because you have to figure every time the person leaves, you got to go back in there and clean up
Yeah.
again. The long term, my longest tenant right now is probably like 22 years, something like that. And it's easy because like you were saying before, the turnover. Every time you have a turnover, you have to do some work. So with the short term, it's going to be even more work. Just bear that in mind.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I forgot to mention, like, that's another thing about Airbnb. The management is ridiculous. Like, you have to have someone come in, clean, put new sheets on, do laundry, and that all is an expense. So if you're in a C-class neighborhood, right, and you're getting all of that stuff done, like you end up profiting more with a long-term renter, because in a C-class neighborhood, you can't really boost the rent up with Airbnb that much. So, it ends up being that you're making more on that long term than it would be with that Airbnb short term. And it is a lot more management. Every time a guest leaves, you have to, get somebody else booked. You have to have someone come in, clean up the place, and then turn it over. And sometimes it's a quick turnover. Sometimes you have somebody coming in, one day, and then the next day by 2 p.m., 3 p.m., the next person is coming in. So that can be stressful if you don't have those people on deck to come in and clean real quick. You might have to manage it yourself, and you might have to do it. Hey, what's up, E? How you doing? Nothing much, man. I see you. You're a little busy there. Oh, you gotta cut your mic on.
Yeah, sorry about that. I've been using all my data. I used all my data and whatever. So my phone has been super slow. But so you want me to get 2 cents?
What's up?
I said you want me to get my 2 cents?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it, man. Let's get it.
Okay. Okay. So no. This is everybody. Right? Just
Hello.
Jennifer in the back. Right. All right. So
What's happening in it?
so the rooming situation is awesome, right? It's very lucrative, right? What you could get for the whole apartment, if you just broke it down into a rooming situation, you can get it times 2, right? Instead of getting $3,000 for the apartment, you can get, let's say, $1,200 per room if you have 4 rooms, and the math on that, $4,800, right? So you're like, so it's amazing. And I came in on what you were saying, as far as, so what we do every week is we have a cleaner come in the house every week, right? And it shows, number one, that we take care of the property. Number 2, what my mom does, she made a good point. So we have this, like, how you have hand towels in the bathroom, and whatever, you wash your hands and you wipe your hands on a hand towel. So every week not only is the garbage taken out, right? That's an indication that the house has been cleaned. But we change the color of the hand towels, right? So that'll also let you know that the house has been cleaned, right? So you got to take care of the property the way we take care of the property, right? And also, one of the good things that we have good people in there, because they'll let us know if the new person is not up to snuff.
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's super lucrative. You know, and the way it is now, the way the world is going now is a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford to buy homes, unfortunately, right? So it's
Are you freezing up a little bit, E? Yeah, he froze up a bit. But I guess once he comes back in, he can explain more about the room rentals. But yeah, Ibrahim, that's my cousin. He's doing it. He's doing it in New York City. So, you know, that's even more lucrative than, you know, if you're doing it, you know, say upstate or something like that. They're making a killing doing that. Go ahead.
it's nice. You know, it's nice, and it's hands off. Like it's literally hands off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you prove yourself to be you know, a decent landlord, like not to be super landlord, like I'm super tenant friendly, right?
Yeah.
My mom is not, so it's like it's good because she's yin and I'm yang. So I give too much, and she doesn't give up anything, you know.
Mm.
But they know that, right? And I think that's awesome. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Do you see any cons? I know the pros they outweigh the cons for
Mm.
room rentals, but what have you seen where you're like, you know, I'm not really feeling this part of it, but we know that overall is great, right? So what are some of the cons that you see with the room rentals?
There are no cons to me, at least.
Mm.
Because I don't like someplace. So there was one girl who was really messy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have to deal with it. Like they have to deal with it, you know. But they just tell me like, yo, this girl's really disgusting, whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't. There are no cons for us, you know.
Gotcha.
It's the people living there. So, but what it is, you have to be super attentive to what's going on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say, like, yo, like if I have to talk, like usually my mom does all of the footwork, and my brother and I are the brawn. So my mom's brain, and we're the brawn, right? So
Gotcha.
like she had a tenant, she had a guy, you know, short-term rental, like 3 months, right? But the guy was a different culture. Like in his culture, women are like, you know, subjected, and they're just like, whatever you do, what I say, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had to say, hey, partner, listen, if I go and talk to your mom like that, how would you feel?
Mm.
I said, well, you know, I said it's a different type of, you know, it's different. It's not like in your country, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, what you did though is you lost the right to actually communicate with her. So
Mm.
now you can only communicate through me, right?
Mm. Gotcha.
And so now you lost that level of access. And you know, it ended up working out fine because you know he finally got it. He understood that because we were about to terminate his lease, you know,
Mm. Yeah.
because it was, you know, like I said, cultures are different. Like I get it, that's your culture and that's how you got to operate, but it's not where you from, it's where you at, right? And where you at is in our space, so you
Right.
have to act accordingly.
Right.
And if you can't, then you can also find someplace else to live, right? Because yours is not the only dollar on the block. So
100.
yeah, so it was a little, you know, but that was only one that was only, so what my mom likes to do is she deals with the female tenants, and my brother and I, we deal with the male tenants.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And let me ask you, so as far as renters, what is your preference when it comes to renters? Would you rather, the single renters, or would you rather, long term, you rent out the whole apartment?
It's funny, honestly, because I have a space where I can put somebody in my space upstairs. I have a 1-bedroom upstairs, and I did the calculation. I'm losing out on about like $6,000 a year by not doing what I'm doing in the other space, right? But to me, it's like, I'd rather be reliable, and your word goes a long way. So what I would prefer to do is to, have a long-standing relationship with someone, as opposed to just the quick money, the quick money, right? So, because this is space, so I'd rather have somebody in there reliable who I can, talk to, and we can, come to an agreement or whatever, right? Do I have one of those or no? You got one for me or no? Excuse me one second. Yeah, thank you. So, I would much rather have the long-standing relationship with someone than, just like a little 3 months, and I like the turnover. I'm old school.
Got you.
I'm old school. So I'd much rather form a relationship with someone and kind of foster that relationship. And, am I losing out on money? Yeah, but money is not everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we're in the other space, we're doing that. We're like, the money is just, money is money,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But now that I see what it is, if I had to do it again, I would do the short term, to be honest.
You do the short term?
Yes, I would. Because it's more lucrative.
Okay.
And that's what it's really about. Like, it's nice to form a relationship, but it's really about money. Right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it is a business, right?
Right. I'm providing you a service. You provided me my bread.
Right. 100.
Period. That's it.
Yeah.
No.
See, yeah, I like to foster relationships too, and the long term. So we've seen, some people with the single room rentals, we've seen that these people are starting to stick around, right? So I guess it just depends on the area or the situation, but we're starting to see those long-term tenants. It might be the area where those long-term tenants are sticking around because the affordability of it all, right?
Right.
Instead of them going to get a apartment and paying double, they can rent for a discount, right?
Right.
Are you seeing that with your tenants? Are you seeing like some of them sticking around as far as the single room rentals, or are they all just a quick turnover and you just profiting major on the monthly income? How is it for you?
So the space that we have is, it caters to medical students, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we wouldn't, if there was just a random guy or random young lady off the street who said, "Hey, listen, I see you have an apartment for, I see you have a room for $1,500. Could we rent the room?" And it's like,
Yeah.
Like, we want you to be focused. Like, we don't want you to come in there and hang out and, drink, smoke, and then, like, just, just have the place, the place is suited for students, right? That's what the place is suited for. It's suited for students. Well, that's the tower, by the way. Not to, So
Nice.
place is suited for students, right? So, you come in there and it's perfect because everybody's about their business. They're all medical students, right? So they do their rotations, they go to the hospital, they come home, they study, right? Quiet, like 23 hours out of the day, it's quiet, and I tell my mom that's one thing. She's the yin and I'm the yang. She doesn't care about you. Oh, I don't care. I'm this and I feel this way. And I said, listen, you have to understand this generation, like they write,
Yeah.
So it's all about reviews. It's all about stars. I said that's all it's about. So if a minor, like a small thing goes a long way, So you can't be so rigid. Like you have to be a little flexible. And, understand that this is how this generation operates, right? They operate off of reviews. Right? They operate off of, it's word of mouth and reviews, right?
Yeah.
So she's beginning to understand that now, and she's beginning to recognize. She's showing me, like she told me, oh, look at the reviews they gave us, and I don't even want to see it. I don't care because no, I know, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it's about. It's about the reviews, So somebody who, like, if there was somebody looking, like, we don't even advertise it to anyone who's not a medical student.
Oh,
Put it
God.
like this: we don't even have to advertise, right? Because people call us, right? And the review, the word of mouth. So if there was somebody looking for a room, that wouldn't even, like, it's on this thing called Furnish Finders, which is like for what do you call them? The nurses who what do you call those guys? The
Oh,
not
travel nurse. Travel
the
nurse.
traveling nurses, right? So it's on a website for traveling nurses, and it's on a website for medical students, right? Who have rotations at the hospital, which is like 7 blocks away, right? So if you're a traveling nurse working at the hospital 7 blocks away, or if you're a medical student, school, and doing your, not residency, but whatever it's called, I don't know what it's called. But anyway, if you're working at the hospital 7 or 8 blocks away, then this is going to come up on your radar, right?
100.
Yeah, and it's the one thing you're never going to run out of, right, students.
Yeah.
And one thing you're never going to run out of is nurses. Like, you're never going to run out of them. So we literally don't have to, and we don't even have, like, we're going to buy a house just to turn it into this rooming house. So we're looking at homes. The market is a little funky right now, but we're looking at homes in the same, radius of the hospital to do the exact same thing that we're doing now. Because it's like profitable,
Yeah. 100. And I see that you guys found a niche where, it's not students per se, it's medical students, where I was telling everybody here, like, the nurses, if you mix the nurses with medical, that's perfect, because they're going to school, they're out of the apartment majority of the time, and you're not really gonna have any issues with them. So our issue in the past has been, we have rented to regular college students, but you guys found a niche where they're actual students, but they're in the medical field. So that's a perfect match right there. That's a perfect match. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, I don't know how we lucked up on this one. My mom, one of her, partners said, I think she has the same thing going on. But it's on the other side of the island, right? Because, there's a couple hospitals. So she has the same situation, rental going on at associated with another hospital. So we rented, we did the renovation. When we first did it, we were looking for because it's a 4-bed, 2-bath, which is kind of, it's hard to get off. It's like gonna ask somebody. You can't take less than like $3,000, right? Not in this market. You can't. So then, do you want to do the program? I mean, all right, I guess. Like like if you graduated from Harvard and your wife is a brain surgeon and but you just fell on hard times and now you got a voucher. All right, that's fine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when is that the case? You know what I'm saying? So
right.
So it's a little tough to. So I'm like I'm really skeptical of this, right? I wouldn't do it because I would, but the conditions have to be like I'm extremely tough because once you give somebody the key, it's hard to get that key. Yeah. So you have to be be careful about who you let onto your property.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, New York City is like a tenant. New York State and city is like a tenant-friendly situation.
Right. 100.
Tenant-friendly.
100. Yeah,
everything's worked out.
We hit that earlier. We were saying that New York City is a tenant friendly, so you definitely got to vet correctly, because if not, some of these people are professionals where they'll stay in your apartment for as long as they can, and then they'll hop on to the next place, right?
Right.
So,
professionals out there.
Yeah.
Professional scammers.
Right. 100%. 100%.
Listen, I don't knock anybody's hustle. Just don't be around me with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do that with someone. Just don't do it with me.
Right.
Because I work for everything I have, and it's kind of like I get it, whatever. But it's very lucrative. Very lucrative. I don't even see any money from it. It's weird. So we have this thing, like my brother and I, we all put in. My mom did like 50%. We did 25%, 25, 25. But I don't really, my brother doesn't really need the money. I don't need the money. My mom doesn't. So we just kind of, let it work for itself,
Gotcha.
But we take that money and we reinvest it into the house. That's what I do with everything. Reinvest it into the house, and we kind of put it to the side to try and find another property that can generate the same amount of income,
100.
So it's the same, the same thing. Same thing.
Okay, yeah, that's a major key that Ibrahim said. Like if you have properties, take that income and reinvest it into the properties. I know this is getting off a little bit off subject with long-term, short-term, midterm, but if you have properties, take that money, reinvest it into your properties, build up the properties, build up the equity that you can recycle that money and repeat the process. That's what real estate investing is. You're investing more into that property so you can build the equity, so you can take it and recycle, do it over again.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you escape the rat race. If you want to escape the rat race, or that's how you build wealth, right? So just keep that in mind, guys. Ibrahim, you got anything else? Oh, I wanted to ask you, do your for those people that are single room SRO, or they renting the room, do they refer other people? Is that what you're seeing, or it's just people coming from Furnish Finder, different areas like that?
No, some lady last week just came and dropped off a deposit for my mom, and she's not moving in until October 26th.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So it's definitely a referral.
Okay.
Definitely a referral, and it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both, right? It's a good mixture of both, right? So
Gotcha.
again, like I said, we keep when we were doing renovations, right? I said, listen, I'm super tenant friendly, so they have everything. They have everything they ever want. Like they can't ask for anything. And what we're gonna try to do this spring/summer is we're gonna try to redo the front porch, right? To make that an area if they want to come out and study on the front porch, they can come out and study on the front porch. And then we're gonna try to, put maybe a couple tables and chairs in the backyard. That way, if they want to actually study outside, they can study outside. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's all like, it's word of mouth and it's a little bit of both, 50-50.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what we're seeing too. It's word of mouth, and then there's also referrals too. And sometimes with the referrals, we give a referral incentive, which helps.
That's actually a good deal.
Yeah, it helps a lot. $50, $100 here, there. That goes a long way because they see that and then they're like, all right, that helps me, and I can get somebody in here that I'm friends with.
Right.
We work at the same place. We're at the medical, we're in the medical field. We're working together, and that turns out to be good because they get along in that place, in that environment where they're living.
Right.
So we've seen that, and then we've seen people come from Facebook Marketplace, Furnish Finder, Zillow, all of these places. People are coming in, people come in, and word of mouth is real. Like if you're a good landlord, and you have good communication with your tenants, you don't be surprised if you get somebody coming in and saying, hey, I have a friend that needs a place. A lot of this business is word of mouth, and you can get more tenants by just that, by word of mouth, if you're a good landlord, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, anybody got any comments? Comment?
I co-sign that.
Okay. Copy. Okay. We're at 8:00. We're at 8:03 right now. So I'm just gonna go over the verse for the night. Ibrahim, before I do this, you got anything else on short term, midterm, long term? Any last details?
I'm sorry I was late. I was, my been a little
Okay.
janky. But I was running around, actually. We just finished having lunch or something, or something like that. So,
okay. Yeah, I know. And I appreciate you taking our time to come on here and kind of co-host. I know you out there having fun on a little mini vacation or whatever.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on here and helping us out with that.
No, I'm here every week, man. You already know how we do.
Yeah.
One little comment.
Go ahead.
Quick comment. Sorry, I'm in the dark, but my quick comment is like when you're landlording, my nephew Ibrahim came over here the other day, and he helped me with some work out there. It was a couple of $100, but I only had to pay for the supplies, right? And it's the same way when he calls me, like I use my talents. I went over there, a little while back, cut all his floors up, parquet, them beautiful floors, right?
Yep.
If you have a talent and you can use it to barter, so you don't have to, necessarily pay top dollar for what's being done, you should do that. So I'm just saying kudos to Ibrahim. Thank you for the work. We still got some more work to do, but I appreciate
Just a little
you.
bit.
Right.
Yeah, no problem.
100. Appreciate that. And that's a segue into if it's not always money. It can be talent, right? Where people can help out other people. It doesn't have. It could be a referral. It could be like, hey, I know a lawyer that can close on your property, that can help you close on your property. We're all in this group chat, and we can all help each other in some way. Like my dad was saying, my cousin Ibrahim went over there and helped him knock out some work around the house. And if he didn't do that, if my dad didn't ask him, he would have to pay somebody to come in and do that, right? So always remember, it's not always about the money. Sometimes it's about the relationships with, in real estate, relationship with your tenants, relationship with people around you. Relationships can take you somewhere where money may not be able to take you, right? So always remember that. We're gonna get into the verse of the night is Hebrews 12 and 11, right? It says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but pain. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Okay, so
Hold on, say that one more time. I'm sorry.
so Hebrews 12:11. It says,
Okay, good.
no discipline seems pleasant at the time,
Ibrahim, mute your phone, man. Mute your
but pain.
Ibrahim, mute.
Hebrews 12:11. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Right? So this is talking about discipline. This is talking about God disciplining you sometimes. Sometimes you got to go through struggles, and you may not see why, and it may feel painful, right? But you got to realize that's God training you to be better later down the road. It's not always the enemy that's like, oh, it's the enemy that's attacking me. No, sometimes it's God disciplining you so that you can be better. You may lose something, or something may go wrong. That's God disciplining you to say, listen, son, or listen, daughter, you gotta get this right. And it comes down to us as parents too, or as friends, telling your friends, okay, maybe that wasn't right. It can be critical. You can criticize somebody, and it may hurt them, but it's building discipline for them. Just like if you have kids, like my niece, like we disciplining her and telling her to shower, telling her to do her work, or she gets on punishment for certain things, and it's not to hurt her, it's to discipline her for the long term, and make her grow in the long term. That's how God does us too. He disciplines us sometimes, and it's not always the enemy. It's God helping you for later down in the road. Okay. Anybody got any questions on that? Anybody got any comments on that? Before we head out, it's 8:08. It's 8:08 now. So anybody got anything? No? Okay. All right. Well, if anybody does have any questions or anything, feel free to email me, text me. If you guys have any, I want to say, any points that you guys want to bring up in these conversations every week, send it over to me. We can go over whatever you guys want as it goes for real estate. Any subject, if I know it, I'll come on here and I'll teach it to the best of my ability. Okay. Anybody got any questions? Anything before we go? Okay. All right. So I'm gonna pray us out, and then we'll see you guys on the next week, on the next meetup. Okay. All right. Father God, we thank you. We thank you on tonight for your grace and mercy, Lord. We thank you, God, for our finances, and for you giving us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to be better in life and to be in your word, Father. We ask you, God, to bless everybody on the line, Father. Bless their finances, Lord. Help them to do what's right and what's correct in your eyes. And let your kingdom come down here on earth just like it is in heaven, Lord. Please discipline us in the right areas that we need discipline in, and we'll always give you the glory and honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys.
Amen. God bless you.
All right, guys. So
Amen.
love you all, and hope to see you guys next week. All right. Same
All right, love
time.
you guys. Talk to you.
Okay. Later, E. Thanks.
Take care. All right, no problem, man. No problem. Talk about being late.
Later.
Talk to you guys later.
All right,
Everyone have a
later.
good evening.
Have a good evening.
Have a good evening,
All right, everybody have a wonderful evening.
Wonderful
Bye-bye.
evening. Grace and peace.
Bye-bye.
All right. Stop recording.